Okay. This is good? Adrian is good. Adrian, are you focused? Adrian, are you
I'm okay. I'll come.
I'm gonna go there.
So I'm going to explain the 5 images that I had, which kind of explains how we started this thing. And it was about the kind of conversations, and basically my slides, the first one is why corners. And Behnaz and I, we noticed that we teach in multiple schools, and one of the things that we loved about architecture is gradually fading in architecture school, and that was a kind of a serious architecture conversation, that somehow student projects are the alibi or the starting point for that. And you would see, and this is the first thing, because I was an architect when I came to University of Toronto. I mean, I had my architecture degree, and I hadn't seen this kind of heated debates over a student's project, and it was an interesting dynamic. And gradually, for a whole host of reasons, that tradition is going out. We still have lectures. We also have reviews. People more often than not, they have their opinion, and there is a kind of a politeness that seems to be not quite generative of the nature of those debates that we like. And so we have the lectures, which I think is a bit high, and we have also, after reviews, when you guys are done, we also go to bar. And we talk a lot, and that is also a different kind of conversation. But at the end of it, it feels not properly architected. So somehow we have to be engaged with the proper theme of architecture to generate an exciting, night like that. And we always had the luxury of having Andra from Forno Cultura, which would host the event, and the sequence tonight has changed. So we've had, this is the 4th one, and we've had many interesting people, and it seems to be working, I think so far. Even tonight has been working, I can verify that. And, but basically it's like a combination of, the idea of corner was because this was a corner lot, and there's something about that, the one-to-oneness. We also thought it's an interesting idea for people to bring their favorite corners at 3 scales. So the architecture, you have a corner which is about how 2 walls meet. You also have an idea of a corner lot, which is an urban condition. And there's also about a corner building. Those are 3 scales of architecture, and we thought if we can ask people to bring, their favorite corners, not necessarily their own work, but it can also be their own work. So that's the starting point. And Peter also liked this, and the first thing that he mentioned was Angelo has to be here. I need to have this thing with Angelo. So we didn't know Angelo. We knew the work, but we hadn't met Angelo until I mentioned this. Sorry.
I neither.
Until I mentioned this to Nader. At the moment I noticed FOMO, which I taught Angelo what FOMO is. So the moment he got jealous about not being here tonight, we noticed that we have so much in common. So this is the setup. Essentially, it's Peter Seeley's night, and he would introduce Angelo. I know that Angelo's work. I know that Angelo's work, and he's a professor of practice at MIT. And Peter Seeley is the director of our Bachelor of Architecture program. We are lucky to have both of them. And I let Peter tell the personal story of how you guys know each other and more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, good evening. Bonsoir. Boa noite. Asir Bakir. My career as a designer ended with a project for 2 corner buildings, designed together for an option studio at Harvard's Graduate School of Design, and this studio was taught by my interlocutor this evening. This project is for a ballet school just behind the Teatro Municipal in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and it offered me not only the chance to stage an urban confrontation or configuration in the heart of the world's true city, but it also brought me into contact with my great friend and mentor, Angelo Bucci, from whom I have learned so much. Angelo, now a palavras para expressar a minha felicidade esta conversa com você esta noite. And my thanks to our very good friend Cyril Miguel for helping me with that. Left me a voice message. I have now been teaching at the Daniels faculty for almost 10 years now. And as a historian, teaching at Daniels has kept me intimately connected with practice through a series of engagements with brilliant colleagues, many of whom have also become close friends. It is great to see so many of you here this evening. I feel we are engaged in a common project of culture, society, and urbanity. Often we disagree. In our best moments, we persuade each other. Even when we don't, a larger dialectical operation seems to be at work, inexorably carrying us forward, even in difficult times. For me, the leftover strip of asphalt outside, which we lovingly call Ja Plaza, is Toronto's greatest public space. This is partly for its formal attributes. It is exactly the right size, and it makes few demands of its users. Thankfully, it has few flammable materials. But it is mainly due to the convivial hospitality which my dear friends Banaz Asadi, Nima Javidi, and the members of their award-winning studio bring to it. They will urbanize Canada, whether their fellow Canadians like it or not. Banaz, Nima, let's see how this goes. Shoma Mizban Haye, Binazari Hastid, Dustiye Shoma Bahoye Man Basyar Aziz Ast. My thanks to the brilliant Diva Shams, who's here tonight, for helping me with that one. Who needs Google Translate when one can find speakers of most of the world's languages in every one of our classrooms at Daniels? This brings me to the subject of tonight's gathering in what is the fourth JUTSU Corner Talk. My remarks, which are really just an excuse and a pretext to launch into a discussion with Angelo, will focus upon the interior corner, the re-entrant corner, the negative corner. Not the freedom enjoyed by the 270-degree outside corner, like we have outside, but the constraint binding its 90-degree sibling. Within architecture as a disciplinary endeavor, we often speak of the corner, and especially the interior corner, as a problem to be resolved. It is the place where repetitive structural and significatory systems, such as columns, arches, pilasters, mullions, etc., run into problems. In fact, they run into each other with unsightly and often hilarious consequences. As Michael C. Duddy notes, in such moments, architects are often faced with a choice: to let the analog algorithm which generates the corner condition run without interference often means to permit a rational mistake, which Duddy terms, a logical accident. The resulting interior corner is correct, but it looks wrong. To do the opposite, to interfere and make adjustments, is to create an irrational truth, which Duddy labels as an intervention. As he writes, in a simple repetitive system, the corner can be expressed as a logical accident, which appears as an imperfection that is nonetheless inherent to the system, or it can be expressed as an intervention that resolves the accident. In so many cases, the same system which produces a logically harmonious and beautiful exterior corner demands a sacrifice from the interior corner, which ends up either in a mess or requires the system to be broken. Reflecting upon Bramante, Peter Eisenman identified the corner as the sign of architecture. In particular, he was referring to corners in which the architect had intervened to solve the corner problem. In fact, such corners materialized both architecture itself, that there's still a corner, and its signifier. If Adolf Loos's mound in the forest was supposed to provoke a visceral reaction, reaffirming architecture's irreducible essence, then Michelangelo's corner column at the Laurentian Library in Florence says the same to our intellect. This is architecture. Or, in the phraseology of Kanye West, this has been architected. Such a view posits the interior corner as a geometric and aesthetic problem, one subject to iterative amelioration. So we see Bramante's successive corners and Palladio's rotated ionic column volutes. So here at the Palazzo Barberini, you've got in the front, the ionic column has been adjusted. So one volute is the way you'd expect it. So is the other, but at the corner, the volute turns 45 degrees. But then on the other side, the inside, whatever, you just kind of leave it like that, which in many ways is both actually correct, but also looks strange. Mies van der Rohe corrected the squeezed re-entrant corner of the Seagram building, and often we forget that the Seagram building has re-entrant corners towards the back, with his design for his One Charles Center building in Baltimore, Maryland. There, the solution was actually to further cut away from the building, removing the added secondary system so as to express the pure cornerness of the corner. Once again, this is architecture and this has been architected. But I want to move beyond the re-entrant corner as a pure symbol or detail to instead consider it as an inhabited space, one that remains highly symbolic. It will surprise none of you here tonight that I will do so with an example from Berlin, Germany, a city to which I have brought Daniel's students for several summer courses, and you are all welcome to join us this summer as well. The typical Berlin apartment was built in the 19th century and follows an L-shaped plan. This drawing has 4 apartments on it around a courtyard. I'm going to highlight one of the bigger ones. So it's in an L like this in the front. There's another one that mirrors it symmetrically in an L like that at the top. And you also have 2 smaller L-shaped apartments at the back. Right. This L-shaped plan applies in tenement housing for the industrial proletariat. It is ubiquitous in middle-class housing for the Mittelstand of petit bourgeois artisans, and it is also present in the more luxurious, larger units in the western suburbs for wealthier citizens. Also, just want you to remember these red dots on the corner rooms, because we're going to get back to them. The form of the Berlin apartment came about when front, street-facing buildings were expanded with lateral side wings so as to reach a back of block building as well. This created a typological series of O, U, C, and L-shaped buildings organized around interior courtyards. And the plan over here, the 4th image, is very similar to the one we just saw on the previous slide. What's unique, and this is the key point, is that the spatial needs of bourgeois families required both front and side rooms. So instead of just having the nice rooms in the front, the bourgeois family also needs spaces on the side, which means the apartment has to figure out how to turn an L-shaped corner. So in the front, you have these representational spaces for the family, and on the sides, you had practical areas for servants, but they have to fit together in one unit. Connecting these 2 worlds at the apex of the L was the Berliner Zimmer, or Berlin Room in English. And we'll note on the plans the letters BZ have been placed to show this corner room that connects the front and the side of the apartment. The Berlin Room was a contradictory space, both gloomy and convivial, critiqued and beloved. A Berlin room typically had 3 doors, and most importantly, only 1 corner window, because it's at the apex of the L, so it just gets a tiny access to the courtyard. Its function is ambiguous. As Jan Harris notes, while other rooms in the apartment clearly state, I am the bedroom, I am the living room, or I am the study, the Berlin room simply shrouds itself in silence and ambiguity. Harris is the author of the definitive work on the Berliner Zimmer, and I'm going to pass around my printout of a PDF of it. The slide that you see on screen, which has a whole bunch of examples of Berliner Zimmers or Berlin rooms, is highlighted with the post-it note. But there are also lots of great photographs in the back. He describes the space as an androgynous element whose primary function is to mediate between the reception rooms and the ancillary spaces. Harris' study, and I've marked the image on screen with a post-it note, shows the variety inherent within the typology, And you'll notice how every single one of these rooms, in one way or another, kind of reaches towards the courtyard to have a window to bring light into the space. The author, Kirsty Bell, in her fantastic Berlin memoir, The Undercurrents, which is a sort of Wunderkammer of Berlin history, spaces and their representations, she describes an 1845 painting by Adolf Menzel, which is entitled The Balcony Room. This depicts a Berlin room in Menzel's own apartment at 18 Schöneberger Straße, overlooking the Anhalter Bahnhof. As Bell writes in a separate magazine article about this painting, with only a single window overlooking the central courtyard, the Berliner Zimmer tends to be gloomy, a dim space for passing through. If you are lucky, it may receive a brief ray of sunshine at some point during the day. On a spring day in 1845, German painter Adolf Menzel made a painting of his Berliner Zimmer at just such an auspiciously sunny moment. This room, the Berlin Room, was to be Menzel's studio, and Bell interprets the splotches of paint that are visible on the wall as a self-reflective gesture at both the painting's own materiality, it's made with paint, and Mendel's intended use of this particular room. Some authors wrongly attribute the origins of the Berlin Room to Carl Friedrich Schinkel's Fehlner House, which we see on the right. But as Harris has demonstrated, it was already in use beforehand. So we have an early apartment plan, and you kind of start to pick out this corner room with its window towards the courtyard, which is earlier. While the Fehlner House does perhaps mark a transition in Schinkel's career from a neoclassical concern with aesthetic beauty to a more functionalist interest in materials, thereby presaging the later Bau Academy, its treatment of the apex of the L differs from the Berlin Room in that it is rotated to maximize exposure to the courtyard. Many authors writing on the Berlin Room explore its social dynamics and symbolic meanings within the shifting class structures of 19th century Berlin. In other words, they're writing about the fact that why is it that all the different social classes in Berlin decide to include this same awkward room in their different apartments. Isabelle Housset, in a 2017 article, traces the evolution of the Berlin Room from its origins in bourgeois flats in the Biedermeier, or 1815 to 1845 period, into its apogee in working-class tenements built after 1848. For bourgeois inhabitants, the Berlin Room offered an intellectual space of exchange. Like everyone in the apartment is always running into each other in this room, which communicated both social informality and modesty in opposition to the rigorous strictures of court society. So the bourgeois are aware they're not aristocrats, they want to behave differently, and they behave by talking to each other in a room like this. For Housset, in Berlin, the ideals of tight-knit family and social bonds became associated with the dim lighting and coziness of the Berlin Room. Berlin's great building typology, the multi-courtyard Mietskaserne, or rental barrack tenement, and it's in these buildings that we find Berlin rooms, emerged thanks to laissez-faire capitalist speculation and the emigration of industrial workers to the rapidly growing city, which became in 1871 the capital of the newly unified German Empire. The Mietskaserne's form was derived from a limited set of building regulations known as the Hobrecht Plan of 1862. These were mainly limited to defining the maximum building heights and minimum courtyard sizes, the latter sufficient for horse-drawn fire engines to enter, exit, and be turned around. Also in 1862, the municipal building officer, Gustav Aschmann, published a series of 23 sample apartment plans on 10 sheets. Aschmann's templates largely followed existing examples and proved extremely influential. They were widely adopted, I mean everyone was using them, by builders for tenement construction and solidified the Berlin Room's place within Berlin's urban fabric. in which they were endlessly repeated. One way in which the Berlin Room was defined by Berliners, by Prussians, was in opposition to the Parisian salon. In French apartments, and we have a Paris apartment plan right here, and before I read the sentence, in Paris you put the staircase in the corner. So there's a tiny corridor that can get you behind to the servant spaces, but essentially you just put the staircase in the corner. Budapest did the same. Vienna, it's a little bit different, but again, it's the staircase that's in the corner. So I've said that, which is great. Whereas Parisian domestic life centered around the salon, German critics extolled the modest family values embedded within the Berlin Room. So in Paris, you invite a whole bunch of strangers into your front room for discussions, and you have really fancy furniture for them to sit on. And in Berlin, the family gathers in the Berlin Room, perhaps with some close friends. As Rousseau writes, the architectural layout of the home functioned not just as a metaphor for the impenetrable sanctity of family life, but also as a physical articulation of the family members' relationships to one another. Whereas the French salon is all about connections with outsiders, the Berlin Room was all about internal family bonds. Both the Mietskaserne and its Berlin Rooms faced growing criticism. Both were dark and ill-ventilated. Modernist building regulations in 1925 banned new back-of-lot construction, and Berlin turned towards another tradition, this time, to use the German word, of Stadtlandschaft, or city landscape, meaning to place urban objects in green spaces. The result can be seen on the left with Martin Wagner's modernist estates, this Bruno Taut's Horseshoe, and later in the post-World War II Hanseviertel. But the Berlin Room did not die, since it remained in so much of Berlin's extant housing stock. Its indeterminacy and fulcrum-like position within the domestic interior made it into a model for squatters' communes post-1968. Oswald Matthias Ungers adopted the Berlin Room for his design for housing in the Märkische Viertel in 1969. So here we've got, again, a kind of 1960s housing design. You've got bedrooms and bathrooms in white, but each unit has a Berlin Room on the corner, albeit with 2 windows. Again, this sort of indeterminate social space that is going to be the anchor for the other spaces in the house. Later, as 1970s anti-modernist tendencies led to the rediscovery of the block and a re-evaluation of the Mietskaserne, the Berlin Room was included in many projects for the 1967 IBA, or International Building Exhibition. These include buildings at Dessauer Straße 3031 by Effenberger, Lehmann, Milinovich, and Servet, which is this one right here, corner rooms marked in gray, by the author I borrowed this from. Kochstrasse 7a, 1112-14, by Grützebach, Plessau, Ehlers, and Knopp, which we see right here, again, these corner rooms in gray. And Kochstrasse 59, Charlottenstrasse 83, by Kammerer, Belz, and Kutschner and Partner, which you see over there. Again, there's a corner room identified in gray on the bottom right. A type which gained prominence just as industrial capitalism today the Berlin Room is popular in high-end condominium construction, so people are still building them. A type which gained prominence just as industrial capitalism upended the traditional stability of the artisanal Mittelstand remains popular in today's epoch of Airbnb and digital nomads. In lieu of a conclusion, and as a way to head into Angelo's presentation, let me invert or perhaps unravel my presentation to bring us out of the block to an exterior corner. I'm going to play a film clip, as I always do.
Verlange keine Dankbarkeit. Aber ich denke, dass du alt genug bist, um zu verstehen, in welcher Lage ich war, als dein Vater fiel. Angela, ich hab dir doch gesagt, du sollst die Teller reinbringen. Will aber nicht. Und bring ich noch ein Chicken? Mein Gott, ich hab einfach vergessen, welche zu holen. Das sagst du ja nur aus Opposition. Wenn wir in eine größere Wohnung ziehen, kriegst du dein eigenes Zimmer. Und bleib dann wenigstens und sag guten Tag.
Soll ich um 12 kommen? Wie immer?
So we've just seen an extract from Gerhard Klein and Wolfgang Kohlhaas's 1957 East German film, Berlin Schönhauser Corner, which explored the disaffection felt by East German youth. This is a socialist repurposing of the American rebel film, and it follows 4 teenagers as they navigate life in East Berlin, between work, often difficult domestic situations, and the lives they wish to live. Many of the main characters had lost one or both parents during the Second World War, and the scene I have just played demonstrates how, in the absence of a harmonious domestic interior, youth flee outward into the street, which belongs to them. For Angela, the young woman we saw, she must leave her home every evening so her mother can pursue an affair with the mother's boss, an affair which is necessary for the family's financial survival. In this case, the street is the eponymous Schönhauser Corner in East Berlin's Prenzlauer Berg neighborhood. The aerial bombardment which destroyed so many lives and so much of Berlin's traditional housing stock and so many Berlin rooms also destroyed the family harmony behind its conviviality. Now, against that, we can note that in happier times, children often adore Berlin rooms. They're right at the center of the house, they're very intimate, and they're often full of nooks and crannies for hiding. What Berlin Schönhauser Corner shows is 2 alternative forms of flight. Out into the street within East Berlin, a position from which the state could still hope to reconcile with its rebellious younger generation. Or, in other scenes in the movie, across the sectorial border into capitalist West Berlin, which is shown in the film to be a place of seduction, crime, and death. Second conclusion. The Berlin Wall was born at midnight in the morning of August 13, 1961, when East German forces sealed the border with West Berlin. First barbed wire, then a hastily erected cinder block wall transformed West Berlin into an enclave. As Cynthia Beat has explored in her delightful 1988 film Cycling the Frame, a film in which her camera follows Tilda Swinton as she bicycles around the inside of the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall consisted of many conditions. Sometimes the recognizable graffiti-covered concrete panels we associate with Cold War Berlin, and other times it was a series of buoys and barbed wire running through lakes and farmers' fields. When it ran through the city of Berlin, the Berlin Wall was in fact 2 walls. An inner barrier keeping East German citizens away from the border, then an outer barrier close to but not on the actual border with West Berlin. In between lay the deadly no man's land. policed by border guards with orders to shoot on sight. What is strange is that both East Berliners and West Berliners felt they were inside the wall. From the point of view of East Germany, the German Democratic Republic, the country was protected by what it termed the anti-fascist protection rampart, keeping capitalist spies out of its workers' and peasants' state. Many, if not most, East German citizens felt entrapped by the wall, which put an end to their previous freedom to visit and often to immigrate, to flee to West Berlin. For West Berliners, the wall made their city into an enclave, creating a sense of paranoia but also of liberty. West Berlin's status as a city of immigrants, Marxist students, squatters, and draft dodgers depended upon its island status, outside the Federal Republic of Germany, yet subsidized by it. The Berlin Wall created many anomalous conditions. One occurred just north of Potsdamer Platz, where the Lenne Triangle jutted outwards towards the Tiergarten. When the wall was erected, the East German authorities decided to cut this corner, leaving a 4-hectare triangular exclave outside the wall, yet still on East German territory. This corner was simply too tight, the angle too acute for incorporation within the Berlin Wall's deadly trajectory. The West Berlin authorities coveted this awkward triangle, which turned into a remarkably biodiverse no man's land over the almost 30 years of its abandonment in geopolitical limbo. In 1988, the West Berlin Senate, who wanted the site for the construction of a motorway, finally concluded an accord to swap this triangle with the German Democratic Republic in return for another parcel elsewhere. An anarchic group of West Berliners occupied the site to protest this proposed highway construction. So just imagine the Friends of the High Line, but with better music and stronger drugs. West Berlin police had to wait until the official handover of the triangle before they could clear the site, at which point the squatters climbed the Berlin Wall to flee eastward in the only known case of a mass exodus in that direction. And footage of this exodus can be seen toward the end of Wolfgang Becker's 2003 film Goodbye Lenin, a film in which the main character imagines a kinder, gentler East German state welcoming floods of refugees fleeing the capitalist rat race in West Germany for the benefit of his ailing mother. While outside corners, such as the one where we are meeting this evening, enjoy a degree of representational stability thanks to the maneuverability of their components within 270 degrees of freedom, inside corners pose unique challenges. Following in the Mannerist spirit of Brunelleschi and Bramante, the example of the Berliner Zimmer demonstrates that within the constrained space of the 90-degree inside corner lies a world of formal, social, and political possibility. Merci, danke, thank you. So it's now my great pleasure to hand over to Angelo.
Well, but
Thank you, sir.
thank you. Of course, thank you, Peter, for this beautiful presentation. Of course, that my will would be just to keep listening to Peter's amazing lecture, and I will try to show you a few things. No, this man brought me here also for this, so I had to. One thing that I was thinking here, so beautiful, to be together with new friends. Thank you for having me in here, and so this is the only possibility I think we have in this world. I mean, this is the world of life. I mean, to be here, talk among people directly, and what the things mean for a Brazilian here in Canada, and what we can build together, no? To build, to have in common, things to share and so on. So to be alive at the same place at the same time is very special. And well, I don't want to make this like a lecture. I brought some images just to about 3 projects, and I thought about to start with these 2 images, you know, of a place that is special for me, that I was saying Peter that it could be presented by himself. But what I would like to say, I was born in a very small village in Brazil, far away from the city of São Paulo, where I went to start the School of Architecture. I reached like 18 years old in my hometown, and until that point I had never met an architect in my life, so I don't know exactly why. I like very much to joke that architecture is a very good option if you don't know exactly what to do. Because we never know what kind of knowledge you can, you need to become an architect. You know, I mean, it's always welcome, everything. But, well, I was actually 19 years old when I went to São Paulo, the city of São Paulo, by the first time, to make the exams for the School of Architecture, and I went to this building. You know, this is not our everyday. It's a very special day in there, but it's a remarkable building, and I for sure I learned a lot from the building itself. This was designed by an architect called Villanova Artigas, who was one of the founders of our School of Architecture that was founded in 1949. Actually, Artigas, one thing that is for me is, it's not important in the Brazilian description, but as I'm teaching at MIT, I think this is very special, because Artigas in 46, he won a grant from Guggenheim Foundation, and he made a trip to US. The first place that he arrived, no, the first place that he saw was Boston, and he went to MIT. And he wrote several letters to his peers in São Paulo, talking about how should be a school and good things about MIT. So this is very, but it's not that MIT ended up being like, at least not so much. Even this trip is not important part of what our historiography in Brazil. But it is an interesting thing. And this building came after 20 years of the foundation. And if I would describe this building, we went there, you can correct. We have former students also from the school, Jeremy that is in here. But if I would describe this building in one idea, this is a doorless building. I know that it sounds completely impossible, in this climatic condition, but it is possible in Brazil. I mean, climatically, it is possible. But it's very interesting for me how hard it is to do this, because we, as Brazilian architects, we inherit all the vocabulary of architecture that was developed mostly in Europe, Portugal, Italy, Spain, and that arrived first for us. So, and all that is, it's not according to this idea. So to design a building without a door, but it is not as a regular building that you just suppress the doors, but a building that is without door, even before exist, it demands a kind of elaboration that is not easy. It's not so. I would say we took like 450 years to be able to do. It's not. I don't know if you feel a little bit. And there are many stories that are very interesting. You know, like when we start to have the law that was not allowed to smoke inside a public building. This is a public school. Nobody here knew where was inside or outside. It was convenient if you're a smoker, but nobody exactly knew. So it's very funny. But and this picture is also remarkable because well, if you're an architect from that place, this building is a kind of temple. And an architect there, we can say we have our own mythology, in which Villanova Artigas plays a role in this mythology. But in this temple, when the building was just inaugurated, actually 1 month after, and we were in a dictatorship, Villanova Artigas, Paulo Mendes da Rocha, that you might know, that Pritzker Prize architect from Brazil, they were expelled from the university. So they just taught there 1 month. And then after 13 years, they were able to come back, and they came back in the lowest position, but they were expelled from the university at that point. So, and when I said that I had in the building itself like a kind of professor, so I was all the time thinking, actually I thought this after the school, but that during the time in which the people were silenced, a building so embodied of humanism can keep talking, during this time. So I think that we could inherit a lot because that people were able to do this building like they did. But another thing about this image that I like very much is because this image, together with the following one, is the best illustration of the quote by Villanova Artigas. That he used to say, and of course he was quoting Alberti, but for us this is Villanova. It's not because he was denying Alberti or suppressing Alberti, but this is Villanova Artigas because he was the one who brought the idea to the current time, and very persistently. But what he used to say is that we should be able to design a house as a city and a city as a house. And I think that these two images play with this idea. This is casual. I put the image together, and when I put together, I remind immediately that quote. Because in here we are in downtown of the city of São Paulo, made the most symbolic place in the center of this 20 million people city, and this looks like a house, the people together like in a theater in here. And the previous one, the scale of the building reminds us as a city. And the ironic thing about this picture is that they expelled the people at that time, but the building became the most important place for the student meetings, the political meetings of the students at the university, always happening here, in this kind of plaza inside the architectural building. But if I talk this time in each image, we want.
No, so we started with.
Yes. Yeah, no, let's go. So, yes, keep going. This is a building that we designed like a few years ago in the city of Lugano. I will show, and I just comment, just keep going. I will just comment one very simple thing, though, that it's a very not important comment, but I could mention about the corners. One more. Sorry.
You're
Let
fine.
me do- Yes, thank you. No, about the corners, I could say two things. No, first, this building is in the city of Lugano. The lake is in here. So this used to be a different place, not exactly Lugano, but nowadays it's part of Lugano. But this used to be a place called Casarate. So, like from here is 10 minutes walking to the center of Lugano. And Casarate is because it's from this, which is the east side of a small river. And this street is a very historical one called Pico, that is the bottom of a hill called Bre in the city of Lugano. So this is a historical location for the existence of this street. So if you come down from the mountain in here, and the access to the center is that way. So you have to go up to the corner, come back, and take that street. So when we designed it, the thing that we would like to do since the beginning was to open completely the side to allow this crossing. So we made a corner maybe here. No? I'm forcing a little bit, but to be no, but it is somehow true. I mean, we suppressed that corner to open a new one in here. and it's funny that we could do. There is a lot of nice stories about. Well, Lugano, they have like the issue of earthquake, that we don't have. You have to imagine that in Brazil, an architect can be graduate and work their whole life without listen the word thermal bridge. There is no thermal bridge in Brazil because temperature never goes underneath 20 degrees, 15 degrees. But Lugano, it's not the same thing. And I learned a lot by working with them, but I enjoy a lot because this is always like a kind of constructive, yes, just to break. It's like just cut and you break the thermal bridge. So easy, but but two walls to make the structure. And these columns that take just the vertical load, you're gonna see. But I mean, and of course that I love the geothermal system. Amazing that the guy had to go down 10 times or more than 10 times the height of the building there what they told me, and I believe that they could save like 75% of the energy to warm the building with this system. So, but this is what we built there. Is of course the building wood, and it is so funny for me, because I don't know in here how you have Brazil in your imagination, but it's common that when we were working there and talk with, I used to go quite often during the construction, but we work maybe 3 years in the design. So at the moment when the building was finished, I had a lot of friends in Lugano, and always talking a lot. But, and when I start to design this, my friends in Brazil, so you're going to be driving crazy because imagine how rigorous is the normative in Switzerland, and we won't be able to deal with that. And then at the end of the process, and of course that I just could because I had a lot of support in there in Lugano. But also I learned a lot. And it's very funny because at the end of the process, I can show to my Brazilian friends everything that we could do in Switzerland that was not allowed to build in Brazil. Like in Brazil, I can't do 6-story high in wood. It's not that they structure in wood, but even the facade in wood is not allowed. I can't do the egress staircase completely outside. I can't do the floor ceiling high glass. I would never, it's not allowed also to have one single elevator that we have in here. And I would never be able to do the ground level completely open like we did. And the rooftop is also a shared space that is very hard to. In São Paulo, I wouldn't. It's not because it's not allowed, but I would never be able to do. So when this building was, a few images, let's go fast. But when this building was inaugurated, this is very Rio de Janeiro. I did a house in Rio, so and with a view to the sugar loaf. So and when I saw this, I thought this is Rio, no? But then the winter comes and you change your mind. But it is very, very close. In the ground level is their office. The guy who invited me, he's a structural engineer who invited me for this project. This project was like his family who built, They demolished a building that had been built by his grandfather with 6 apartments to build this one, and they are all living there. A few apartments are rented. They built 9 instead of 6. And it's nice for me because we could build in there with the same kind of material that for us is very familiar to use in Brazil. The terraço for the floor, the concrete slab, this white piece, this one and that one. This is the bathroom. When you see the plan, it's just one single line. But it is very accurate actually, because the wall is just a single layer of glass. And here it's funny because we were very happy about being able to do a floor ceiling high that for fire purpose is not allowed in Brazil. But then I was worried about if that glass wouldn't be not used in a proper way. So this is why we designed this kind of table. This is the children bathroom, so all connected. And then when the building was inaugurated, they made a party in Lugano, and they brought the whole office. But I have to say, my whole office is 6 people. It's not. Here are just a few. And we went to Lugano for the inauguration, and they made a party underground in this building. That was there was 250 people. I think that if I convert to Brazilian numbers, that would be like 20,000. in Switzerland, it was really a big part, and that moment I But it was like here, barbecue. There was a little bit of Brazilian music, and I was talking with friends. But what I heard, several times that just a Brazilian architect could come here and propose a completely open ground level. And this works. Every day a lot of people cross. And all the time I was joking, but I always heard that was a Swiss guy that created the idea of pilotis. But I could understand that, because the Brazilian architect that became very well known in the 50s, really developed this idea or the repertoire of pilotis. But then, crazily, it became impossible to do in Brazil. People say that the violence, but that's not the reason. Actually, I think that the most important reason is that become forbidden. Forbidden, not exactly, but if I want to do a pilotis, the area would be counted as FAR.
Yeah.
So it may completely not possible. Like in this building, what means to not build one whole floor to keep the ground level. And we lost this possibility. But the thing that at the same time, I like to think this way. I don't know how much this is, but I believe in it, really, that what is beautiful about to work in a different context, if we go with this will to talk, to exchange, to listen, to learn, is that we, by doing this kind of exchange, that in my opinion is right the opposite what we call globalized architecture. I think that what we did is right the opposite. Is by doing that, I think that we can find room to do what wouldn't be possible to be done in one place or other. That we just become possible because we're working together. So, and I really believe in it. So for them, this wouldn't be possible, although of course it is, and they knew how to, but they just a Brazilian could come and propose. But for us, it's also not possible. It's funny. But should I show one more?
Please, no, I think the appetite is there.
I mean, please, you can interrupt any time and make a question. I can stop anytime.
No, perfect.
So this is a kind of, I could say, a theoretical project. But for me, it's important that there is not one idea that came to us and we designed to propose. No, it was completely different. It was an exhibition in the Modern Art Museum of São Paulo that happened in 2013, and the curator, Lisette Lanhado, she invited maybe 35 artists, and beside the artists, she invited like 6 architects, and she brought one question. The question is, how should be the Modern Art Museum in São Paulo in the future? But this question, that seems just a provocation, and of course it is a provocation, but it had a meaning in that city for architects that was very clear. Because the Modern Art Museum in São Paulo was founded in the 50s, a few years before this park, this image is a park in the center of São Paulo, Parque do Ibirapuera, an indigenous word, that was inaugurated in 1954. And in this park we have buildings by Oscar Niemeyer and the garden by Burle Marx, who is the most well-known architect from Brazil and the most well-known landscape designer in Brazil. And you might know. And I love Burle Marx, because there is one thing that Burle Marx, I love Niemeyer. I love Brazil. but I love Burle Marx because he's a guy who used to use a way to represent his project that was completely different, almost painting a canvas. An amazing character. I used to work with an architect who used to be a very good friend of Burle Marx from Rio de Janeiro. Burle Marx, every birthday, he used to offer a party for his friend that was amazing. And he prepared everything, the food, the flowers, but and for the wife of this architect, every year he used to paint a piece of fabric for her to make a dress with the fabric that was painted by him. So, and he, for us, he recreate completely the way that we think landscape design and so. But I like to say that Burle Marx also invented the plants, because he used to go to Amazonia. He discovered maybe, I think that if I'm not wrong, 36 plants that are registered under his name. He brought them to Rio to acclimatate and to prepare to use in the garden, bromelias and so on. So even the plants didn't exist before his work. And he designed this. But this is 1954 when this was inaugurated, this park. São Paulo was celebrating the 400 years anniversary. So this was a park with a program that was like a fair exhibition of the city. No, this was the former pavilion of industry exhibition, art exhibition, and so on. This is 250 meters long and 50 meters wide. Now we have the Arte Biennale. This is 70 meters of diameter. So this is much bigger than the museum by Lina Bobardi in Avenida Paulista. The area of this museum is 10,000 square meters. So it is, and it was there abandoned for, now it's working again. But this is 150 by 35. So, and everyone knows this dimension. I mean, it's a kind of, and they came with this, how should be the modern art museum? Because this museum that was found more or less a few years before the park, and then the museum was like disappear, and the collection was donated to the University of São Paulo. and this is still in the 50s, and 64 Lina Bobardi made an exhibition called Bahia, for which she designed a pavilion underneath, 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings. Another one that was original but built just a few years ago. And these buildings are connected by a canopy that is this slab here, very 50s, as language, but this is lab. No, it's a space that cover 22,000 square meters with no problem. And I wouldn't know nowadays this would be impossible. I don't know how much they had to discuss at that time. But the thing that is beautiful is that this area is by far, I would say 1,000 times more, but I don't know, but by far the most occupied, like used, where the receive much more people than all the buildings together, every day. So this become a very, and this was a free space, it's just a piloty. And the pavilion made by Lina was in here, a temporary pavilion for an exhibition at that point, 64. And after the Biennale, that was for the Biennale, the foundation, the Biennale Foundation, instead to dismantle the pavilion, they kept it and they use as storage and so on. And 4 years later, 68, a group of people asked to make an exhibition there in the same pavilion. They made the exhibition, and the exhibition was called Panorama, like Panorama of Arts in Brazil. After the exhibition, they just stayed and they refound the Modern Art Museum that is in there until nowadays. It was fine, but in the 1980s, the direction of this museum invited Lina Bobardi to design an expansion. And then started a very controversial discussion between Oscar Niemeyer, Lina Bobardi, a lot of people that the newspaper invite to talk. And but they end up doing, the pavilion is in there, and Lina at the end, Lina and Niemeyer, they agree about just to overcome our discussion, it's fine. But that thing remained. And I think this was behind the provocation by that creator. And we were talking about it. The question is obvious. The museum should stay inside the park or should move to a different location. When it was found in the center of the city, not in here. And then we start to talk. One day, the creator came to our office, and we were talking, and we said, well, maybe we could consider, that the museum, we consider a lot of possibilities together. There is a piece of tunnel lost underneath, 150 meters long, underneath the park that we could occupy. We thought about the rooftop of the canopy. We thought a lot of things, and then we made this assumption. What if we frame the buildings and the garden in a square that measure 750 meters long, 4 bars covering, it would be 10 meters wide, 10 meters high. It would be 30,000 square meters, but it is a little less, it's 26 something, because there are some voids, to make the museum in here. And it's a very not interesting or easy, to make a square. It could be this in any place. But the point was, what is the modern art museum that you can do and that can keep in the permanent collection buildings by Oscar Niemeyer and garden by So this is another thing and very interesting. And we designed, it was just for an exhibition, but we made this form of, huh? We made this kind of representation, this collages, no? The collage, this is a picture by Nelson Cohn, a photographer, and the collage made by Ciro Miguel. So it was very nice because once I took the plan that we designed very precisely, you know, with the topography and so on, and we made the site plan. I went with Ciro one day to the park to choose some angles to make the photos, that he made the photos to make the collage. So 750 meters long. One column is 75 meters, that combine the function of column and egress staircase in the right position. So this is concrete with a platform in concrete 10 by 10 meters, in which we rest a truss that face the span that is 75 meters. So each column is like one block of distance to the other, no? So we could have an 11 columns in each bar. We could have like 44 construction site working at the same time. We could produce the truss in the whole state of São Paulo. So we could build this building in 6 months, you know. And it's amazing when we made the plan with all the streets. So we could build it without change any street, sidewalk, building, even without remove any tree in the park. So then we start to do like a theoretical project, but then it's a problem. You start to believe. It's a big problem. No, I don't. This is an image of. No, on this street, for example, it crosses underneath the bar twice, 2 different bars. But this connects the local airport to the center of São Paulo. This is the most, not crowd by cars. Crowd by cars.
Most used.
Yeah, avenue in
busiest.
the city. It means 100,000 of cars every day. No,
Going
crossing the museum, so they have like a huge spider by,
Louis Bourgeois.
thank you very much, by Louis de Bourgeois, but a huge one that could be there on the top of that, so we can see by the car. We could like allow the people walking in the park see, you know, to control part of the floor that are transparent, this kind of thing. And so the funny thing is in here, just to force a little bit again, but to say the corner.
Yes, it's on.
The corner that doesn't exactly happen. It's a beautiful place, but actually the bars, they doesn't touch, but there is of course a very more narrow bridge that connect everything. So it was very fun, I think, as a museum. We thought about this car that could make the whole thing is 3 kilometers, so we can put like 15 people in here. Yes, with Peter, and Peter could make a class in like 4 canvas, no, so the museum could be closed and this guy can. So there was one of the bar, we make an elevator in the city that goes straight to the mezzanine in here for apartment for resident artists. Everything inside this bar could be very, I think, interesting, you know, as a not just an idea. And maybe to close, if I can, one more. this is a very small project. I like to show this project mostly to you, to the students or young architects, that because so everyone will have the chance to do maybe a house, and this is less than a house. This is a swimming pool and a garden. So that was to be placed in this neighborhood. Actually, this neighborhood is older than everything that you see. So this is why it remained. No, it was like somehow occupied and somehow protected when the skyscrapers start to be built. And so in here, the maximum height is 6 meters. So we are here. And they bought a site that is 10 by 25. This is the sketch that my client brought in our first meeting. It's much easier if you put them to work. And they are going to be much more convinced if you work crazy. No, but they brought this, and the idea was to make like a garden. These letters here are trees, and the space to park a car, and a garden, and of course the swimming pool. And they thought we could do this strip with apartment for a custodian, a housekeeper, and just a small room for us. This is the solarium, and that was the idea. And they also brought a question. Should we place the pool this side or that side? So north is there. It's the only thing that I had to do. Or here or there. And this is east and west. So 6 meters is the maximum height, but there is no setback. This is a part wall, this is shading during the morning, during the afternoon. So one side or other, depend if you prefer sun in the morning or in the afternoon, but no way to change the range of time that you are going to have sun hitting the pool. Except if instead to displace to one side or other, we displace it up. And why? Because this is the maximum height that was defined by law. And so if you want to have sun during the whole day, there it means the whole year. It just displaces it up. And well, makes sense. Is it more expensive? No. It's embarrassing, but sometimes no. But I really, I will try to say that's not lying too much. And we did this, they agree. This was the first meeting. I really think that is not, I like very much to show their drawing, because you're gonna see, we did that. Of course that we did exactly that, but not exactly that way. But I like to think that our task is not exactly to have idea. I mean, this can also be part, but architecture is about to know how to build. Not have idea is too open to be an expertise. Everyone is not our expertise actually. And we agree about this, and we propose this drawing that the swimming pool is in here, counterweighted by a kind of solarium here that hanging that strip for the custodian in their own apartment, and you preserve the ground level for the why everyone is trying to get the maximum FAR here. The idea was to have the maximum garden area possible, no? And so here is possible. You can think about these two bodies of construction as when you are here, as if it was like two huge pergolas. This angle is nice to allow the sun goes more, but actually any place here receives sunlight in a moment of the day that you're gonna see is enough. Now the model and this is what we did. So look, the images were taken in two different moments. So this like the day one, we didn't build anything here on the side wall, but we put this grid and maybe 6 months later it was like this, and it always like that, no? I mean, and we didn't build anything but just the green. So, and the garden, the landscape designer here is a very nice guy. Paulo is his name. So I think that in this project they use maybe around 100 species. It is a lot of conversation with the clients. The clients of this, how old do you think that they are? I mean, they are now 80 years old. They were like 70 and something. And a couple with no kids who live in an apartment, would like to stay in the apartment. They used to go very often to the beach that is close to São Paulo, but they were tired to do that, you know. That means like hours. You can go, if you go with no traffic, it takes 40 minutes, but it can take 6 hours if you go in a holiday like everyone. So in the beginning, I thought that was a problem because so you have a site in which you can build a home and a lot of things that, well, I like to think on this, but just to, no, like very, you could build a home, but instead you're going to build a pool and a garden. So it seems not correct. No, I mean the social role of the, how to say, the property, no, or the urban. But then maybe this idea of instead to go to the beach to stay in São Paulo. So the idea of the counterflow, instead to reach the maximum FAR, maximum garden area. I think this makes a lot of sense. No, and not for them, but for the city. I think that it is in favor. So I start to be more relaxed. But also the idea that we didn't know exactly how to call this. No, like weekend houses.
It's an everyday summer house.
Yeah. But you know, if I go with this name, I cannot write this name and ask the permission for construction. And that is it is a real problem. So because the typology, you know, it is so you can call, and we end up calling home because house. But so we did this. Or for me, it's also very nice to think.
It's a masterpiece. It's so amazing.
You went.
Yeah, in person it's even more, much more incredible than the photos. It's really amazing.
It is the thing that I like to think, and I believe that the photos are not because of course this is a structure is a structure, you know what I mean? But when you go there, the garden is much more important, present than the structure. It can even the structure is somehow abstract. But there is this idea, you know, like the first conversation is funny that if I say, no, let's put the swimming pool 6 meters above, so you are crazy. No, but if I say, no, I like to think about this, no, because how imagination, architectural imagination works. Now, if I say the word swimming pool, it starts to excavate the ground. I mean, you don't think twice, no? And there is a construction that is exactly the same, no? That is a water tank. But if I say water tank, we put in there, and a swimming pool put in here. So if I say let's make a swimming pool 6 meters high, you are crazy. But if I say, oh, let's swim in a water tank, oh, it's fine. It is it's exactly
Can I ask,
how.
because I saw this in real life, but I don't know if I had time to understand, because the water, it's moving, there is multiple pools. There's the swimming pool,
Yes.
and then there is multiple pools,
Yes.
and
Yes.
the water is moving between,
Yes.
and then also, and I meant like the sound of the water moving also cuts the city a bit. So you have like the garden, you have the water everywhere, and then you have the movement of the water and the sound of the water. It's like, it's pretty
Yes.
incredible.
Yeah. You know, this is why I invite.
This is just one of the projects. There's other ones too, which are.
But yes, the main pool is over there. When we make the water circulate, the water just pour in that edge to a small pool in here, same level of the apartment and the custodian. And then from this gargoyle it comes for a tank on the bottom. There is one more tank in here that the water runs through the stairs and reach that same tank. From here it return to the top. You know, if you make it circulate, but if you wanna heat the water on the top pool, of course there are some bypass that you close or open and you make the circulation just in there. But this is a system. Also, the water works vertically. I think that it is also interesting. You know. But
Can I say just one? I just want to say one more thing. Then you did something else, because you used the whole site for the garden, for the house, for the pool, but then because any interior space can open, it becomes like the whole site becomes a house, a garden, and pools. Like everything is combined in a way. I don't know how to explain that, but
So instead of the two fighting with each other,
Yeah.
and more space for the garden means less space for the house.
yeah.
You get a house on the whole site, a garden on the whole site.
Because everything is interlayering. Like you see this underneath the structure there of the apartment above. This is a dining space. There's a dining table there in real typically.
yes,
And this living room opens to the garden, so the garden just becomes part of the living room. Like everything is it's really,
and
really.
the areas are very small. We have like, and this for Brazilian context, social context is very remarkable. So 30 square meters for their apartment, 30 square meters for the custodian, and 60 square meters in here. So in total, 120 square meters in here. So it's really small somehow. I all the time know, always, but in this case maybe I was more worried about to not exaggerate it, you know, I mean, in the design and the structure and all this. But and of course this is not so common, but the thing that I used to think as if it was acceptable to design like this is because there is this, I don't know, I took this as an interesting thing, you know. So it's not a house, it is a swimming pool and a garden. With, for a house, are the appendix project or program, not the main program. And what is the small apartment, the custodian, is the appendix for the swimming pool and garden. But how can we suppress from the most
Come in and close the door, please.
Is it that windy?
Come
or-
in.
no, the question is how can we suppress from a house, the house itself, and keep the thing, how to say, working. I don't know. What I was afraid, you know, talking in a simple way that I was thinking is how to prevent a person that come from the street, open the door, the gate from the street, to enter to this space, how to prevent them to not feel as if we are crossing from the living room to the courtyard and the swimming pool. So if we feel like this, that it is like just this piece of a common house, we are going to the courtyard and the swimming pool, but the house won't be there. No, it was very strange. So I think that in this case, makes sense to design a pool in a way that we don't recognize exactly or the house, that the apartment. No, I was worried about not like if we were there being wounded
Been wounded. Been
by
hurt.
the ghost of a house that would never exist. You know, this is a little bit the thing that I was trying to prevent, you know, to not miss the house that couldn't be there, you know, but and then and this place is nice. You're gonna see the airplane, you see, in here. So you're very in the way to approach the airport, the city airport. And I like the airplanes are crossing over this pool 800 meters high. So you see that the sunlight is defined 6 meters above the ground level. The wire, the electrical wires are maybe 8 meters above the ground level. The water table is 2.5 meters below. The resistant soil is 14 meters below the ground level. So there are several layers, and we insert in those layers.
Hey, Angelo, can you go back? Do you really hate corners that touch?
Yes, just to come here. Yes. But you know, this is for to make the water
Of
fall
course, you
down.
want to-
Yes. But the corner, it's very interesting. I love the column that you show. It's really a huge problem, though. When in construction, you know, it tends to zero, so it's impossible to solve. You know, if you can, I try to avoid, but this is. Sorry, too many pictures. Always airplane. I told this to the photographer Nelson Comas, and he was waiting the airplanes. But because the airplanes are there, each I don't know 4 minutes, 3 minutes is very often. Thank you very much. No, but really, the idea, the best was just to keep listening to you.
No. The best is to do the next one of these in Sao Paulo.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, are we from leaving or coming or what is the something is washroom break is about. Oh, we need? Yes, we have more. So, yes, there is. Yes. They need to get rejuvenated.
Come on, and also I think the people who were standing by the door were really cold because the door was there.
So why don't they close it? I don't think.
That's what I asked.
You have to suffer for the
Yes. you have to
And they were standing. Baba,
Yes.
please come
Why
and
don't
sit.
we-
You're just making me so.
I'm too comfortable.
And
So I
Dino
feel
and
that-
Jacob, come on and
Why don't you put it on the table? Put it here, no? Nobody wants
sit. I'm gonna put some tea,
Yes.
maybe. But we need all the cups, like the glass thingies, so we can give you tea.
How long was your construction for this one?
No, it's crazy, but maybe almost 2 years. I don't know why. It's not required. It stopped the construction a little bit. The owners are really. She's a very well-known fashion consultant that could give us the impression that very superficial, you know. But this is exactly opposite. Her way to think, you know. I love because one thing that she likes to say is that chic, but really chic is to be civilized.
No.
So, and he is a professor on philosophy. And his main subject is a guy that remained almost the entire life with a single author, which is Montaigne. So he's amazing.
And the housekeeper leaves that? There is a
Yes,
housekeeper?
the housekeeper leaves, they go every weekend. Sometimes they stay more. It was finished a little before the pandemic. So they used to call me and thank very often during the pandemic that they had this space to spend time.
Okay, in my head, because there are two very different conversations. I'm trying, the purpose of this is not a question, I'm trying to link these two. And it's one of the cases that I think the Berlin Room or, Peter's presentation has something to do with this almost in the very extreme, not this, no, with generally with Angelo's presentation, and I'm trying to connect them with different things. I feel that And if it became a question, it might be a good question. If not, but one thing is, it's yours. Your interest is a problem of a city, meaning that it's less authored,
Yes.
and so it's almost repeating. It's a typological, not a problem, but it's a typological reality of a city that comes, and it takes a while, even for me to understand it. It took me a while because we understand the inverted corner, but you have to understand the density that is causing it. It's like packing so much that only the inner courtyard, so you don't have another window on the other side because it's a blank wall.
The sentence I left out of the presentation is just to say it's this real estate speculation
Yes.
that creates this density. The building laws allow you to just
Yeah.
dance, which therefore means that you have to use that corner.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you can't put a window on the
No,
other
yes.
side,
Yes.
etc.
All of it. So it's, and I love the ending of your presentation, which shows almost a architecture problem. It's not immediate. It's not a question of somebody likes 270 degree, the other one.
Yeah.
It's an architecture problem that historically and socially becomes part of the brain of the city.
Yeah.
That becomes a movie, becomes the whole society gets involved around a typological problem. And then in Angelo's, all of the parts, this is my reading. Like I love when I saw the Lugano building, I thought the reason why they're putting it there, it's about the corners of the facade.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, it's a beautiful building, but we need something. And then when I saw the plan, my argument is there are two, then I love the explanation of the corner, like the urban explanation. The corner lot is not anymore a corner. By evacuating the site or by liberating the site, the mid-block lot suddenly becomes the corner. And in fact, the corner, what we understand of corner of the architecture, which Angelo has a lot of it, are not the real corner. The real corner is the urban corner, which is the extra gap, and the two walls that you never see the corner inside, not the thermal break. The beauty of that plan are the two walls, and it's that.
Yeah.
So to me, that is the corner. The urban is the corner. The outside, of course, there are corners, but there are less protagonists of the project, even though they're the most visible part.
Yeah.
So there is something about typological versus author. And my argument, and here is the, even in the case of so many projects, Angelo always brings the conditions of the site, the purest conditions of the site. There is a moment of invention. There's moments of invention, and my question, or at least it's not, maybe it's even more than a question, that there is a difference between, let's say, the cladding corners, the exterior corner versus the inner and the urban one. And when the architectural problem is typological, that's the most powerful part of the project. And the authored ones tend to blend with the typological problem. And they blend, and it's hard to, it seems one is, and even this, like I love the section that you showed, that the core act is it's like the two neighbors already think it's the act of elevating. And of course there's a lot of spatial and beautiful corners, there are a lot of tectonic corners, but the real invention in your work is always in the urban. At the urban level, you always invent something. And the rest of it, you talk about architecture and it's so beautiful and everybody, I also, love it, but I'm saying the invention always somehow comes from the conditions of the city.
I love this photograph because you don't see the architecture, but the condition
Yes.
has been entirely generated by the architecture. The degree of shade, the falling water, the sense of being in a 6 meter by, I guess, 10 meter by. You feel.
So the two houses are already built inside the next door neighbors. That 6 meter is a wall or is the side wall of a neighbor?
No, it's the side wall is the
So it's-
party wall.
There's a party wall of a neighbor. I'm saying I'm saying there are a lot of seductive things.
Yeah,
But of course,
but-
its genius is the fact that the real thing are the two side walls of the neighbor
Yeah.
that creates a
This-
void.
And that's why I think this is a Berlin room. It's not. But I think in the sense of something inside, something
It's a section
inside
of Berlin.
that's incredibly spatially
Yes,
rich,
Yes.
that's created out of certain accidents and certain decisions.
Yes.
allows this.
Yes. Yes.
It's just it has a lot more sunshine and fun.
I don't know. I see. I would push against that maybe a little bit. I
Sure.
think that the 270 degrees is still important as a constraint because I would argue, as beautiful and wonderful as the work is, there are no corners in your work. I mean, they're absent, right? Like there's no experience of that 270 degrees, which then makes the interior 90 degrees so significant. It doesn't exist here. It's missing in the museum project, and then in the Lugano project, every time that it could happen, you change the materiality, and it's either glass or it's a threshold. And so I think that and so similarly, I would have a question for you, Peter, because I think that the Ungers example is where it falls apart. Because that doesn't have any of the constraint of the other Berlin Zimmers that you showed, and it's a very different condition. That's a condition of excess that kind of, you know, allows that room to sort of float and not be hemmed in by the urban context.
And that, you're 100% correct. That is in a modernist building in void. So it's pure, it's like the alcohol with the beer or whatever, if you will, sorry, I'm looking for a better metaphor, but you get the result without the conditions that produced it. And so either you say, oh, that's like a nice continuity, or you say like that's not at all the same thing. And I would think about that more, but also agree with you. I think it's a very good point. And also, it's a room that has windows on two sides, so already it's a stretch.
I think the students should also answer the same. Gia, can you please ask a question? He always has to. While he was working too much, maybe.
Oh, what was the previous question?
The previous guy was saying, I mean, there were 3 questions combined. There is something urban in Angelo's project, and there was something very urban about Peter's. And Angelo then seduces us with a lot of other things, but the core of the problem is always urban, and that makes it a kind of nice tension between the two. Are you seduced by the architecture or the urban problem that Angelo can immediately detect and turn into a thing?
And where do you detect corners?
Yes, where do you detect corners? That's the
Myself? No, I thought, I will comment Peter, that's easier for me. I think you're right, there is no corners, no. But at the same time, I love when you mentioned both the building in Lugano. I actually forgot to say what you mentioned, that I really, or it was deliberated, that I refused to make a corner in the facade. And the reason why is because even though it's just to share the architectural reasoning, but the structure is a concrete wall, but you don't see a concrete box. There is no box, and the facade is very light because it's wood. But even being wood, I wouldn't like to make any box. I mean, to not give the reading of the heaviness of a box. And so if I could make every corner, if I have an opaque panel to the encounter with the glass, and we did that in all the corners, was to not build a box. So that all the time we were trying to avoid. But I think that the great invention in the Berliner Zimmer is to avoid the corner, because that room put an open in the corner, and and this is, well, the way that Carlos Scarpa made a corner, in a corner between floor and wall. I mean, is to make a gap is like the modern answer for this. But what I love more about the presentation that you did, Peter, is how clear become, no? Because you showed Shinko, Paris. But always the same problem, but mostly in German. No, how that become like part of the one thing that I think that we should use more. One idea, I don't know why we don't use, no, because we talk about architectural culture, like gastronomical culture, but we don't talk about spatial culture. So, and I think this is beautiful, know how that idea become, know, by being repeated, part of the German spatial culture for housing, and when you showed us the Ungars, so if I just saw that Ungars, I would love, because I love his things, but I wouldn't make this relationship with this chronology, you know, that is the culture of the space in that part of the
And
world.
you get, 200 years of people from everywhere else looking at these plans and saying, that's a terrible room, that's a terrible,
Yeah.
fix this, why do you want to sit in the dark all the time? And same about Berliners, saying, no, this is going to be we can't actually figure out how to put furniture in this space. We don't actually know what it's for, but we can't have an apartment without it.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least for a critical mass of people. And I think Nima's right to hit up on it. It's just builders copying these templates. They stretch them one way or another, but they just did it. And they actually made a whole city that way, which is amazing.
I have a question for Angelo, and I'll preface it by I guess some sort of anecdote with Nima and myself, because there is always this nemesis tension between me and Nima regarding one trying to reconcile things and trying to find commonalities between, if two people are presenting, what are the commonalities, as opposed to, I guess, my Eastern European being ready to accept difference, and just people are on the divergent trajectories, and just because we are in Nima and Berna's house, I'll go for the commonalities. And, what I recognize in both presentation, and it's a relationship with authorship that was presented, and what I appreciate very much about Angelo's presentation is this modesty, or somehow trying to erase the fact that I am designing something. It's as if the design is already there, or it's there because the client has designed, or there is a situation, and I'm just enabling that, as you're saying, our skill is in building almost somebody else's ideas. And then in Peter's presentation, of course, comes out of this, the typology of the urban block, and the city architect putting forward a couple of plans that everybody's going to repeat. But for Angelo, I'm still trying to, I guess, to extract a bit more more design honesty from the presentations, because there is, the pool is not a rectangle, it has a slanted wall, and there are things like little things that are so beautifully authored. And I don't know if this will end up in a question.
Yes, what is your position on authorship?
Yes, thank you, Nima. This is where
Do you
we work
acknowledge it,
together.
or your humble soul that just happens to sometimes let things
No,
do things the way they want?
I always joke, that I'm not humble. I just know who I am. But I like very much this point of, I think that we should discuss more the notion of authorship. That it becomes so degraded, that the idea of authorship is like misunderstood as if it was a brief signature. This is like to steal from the idea of authorship what it holds as humanity. I think that we can recognize that the thing was designed by a person. So I think that we really should recover the idea of authorship in this way, that it is important, that in the same way that we talk. I mean, among us, it's Peter, Nima, Adrian. So, we recognize ourselves, but what defines us as a distinguished person in a group. And this is the most beautiful thing about architecture also. Of course, that architecture is a production of a group of people, but each one has its role. And I don't think that it's fair to refuse exactly this role, because there is a parcel of responsibility that comes together that you cannot transfer to others.
And when you say you can't transfer to others, do you also say that you can't transfer to a machine?
Yes, of course. Mostly now, we are talking all the time about AI, and so the idea of authorship is very, very important. But much before AI, it was, so it's incredible because that architecture can be produced by what before AI. Architecture could always be produced, but what is not exactly alive. And nowadays, much more. So, to save the idea, I missed everything. I mean, I really missed that. I mean, we to keep the idea of authorship is also to keep the possibility of mistakes, so take the risk. That is crucial.
But it seems that your authorship is more an updated one, and I find it more contemporary one is that more as an editor rather than a creator of ideas.
But usually his is different.
More
old
like
school.
an editor.
Oh, you're saying
Yes, or at least that's my.
More
Again,
an
that's
editor.
my reading of
more of an
editor.
more an editor.
Yeah, not
I
editor.
know, I don't know.
Editor.
No, I spend like my life design. I'm not. So is what I do.
Can I
every
ask
day.
something on the same line?
Uh,
Sorry, if you
Yeah.
I don't want to cut you if you're.
no, please.
I hope I'm not cutting you, but it's on the same line, I think, because we worked together on two projects, one in New Zealand and one in Quebec.
Yes.
But it was remote work. I was on a computer in Toronto, and Angelo was in Sao Paulo. And Angelo was designing. And it was a really surreal experience for me to work with you, because I never saw you do iterations. Like the way I was trained in New Zealand, which is probably more similar to here, you do hundreds of iterations, all types of iterations of variations of the layout and all of this. But I never saw you do any iterations. But I don't know if in the office your team were doing lots of iterations. but watching you, it seemed almost like totally intuitive. You were making the design completely intuitively,
Yeah.
and for me to watch it was like, how are you making it look so easy, you know? But are you actually doing lots of iterations, or really? Because yeah, I couldn't figure that out.
It's really good.
Yeah.
No, no, I'm not. I don't feel I'm really good. I like to work. I mean, I like the problems of architecture. I think that when I was 25 years old, I thought that I should find a lot of work and very rich clients, and I never had any of that. And now I know I was very lucky of that, because by not having a lot of work and I didn't have anything better to do, so I spent all the time designing what I had to, like this swimming pool. Of course, I spent years in this thing. This is more recent, more challenging for me. And a rich client in Brazil means a lot of things. You know, it's a very unequal society. So if it suppresses a lot of the freedom, or the room for proposals, if you work with this kind of client in general. And what I think that's important about authorship is because I think that the idea of authorship is what holds the most deep like relation with what we call humanism in architecture. So I think that we should be able, in a time in which people are being transformed in things, we should be able to make things full, embodied of humanity. So, and this require authorship, in this sense, but in the sense that is the opposite of what is a grief. Because in this sense that I'm saying,
It's like a signature or
A
a
brand.
mark.
yes, sorry, yes,
Or a brand.
a brand, like it's the opposite of a brand, because the authorship in this sense that is to save the idea of humanism in architecture, it creates rooms for everyone, and everyone answer for what it is imprinted in their work.
Including doubts, mistakes,
Including.
not being able
Yes.
to kind of
Yes, of course, this is
resolve
very,
it.
very important. If we are, it's beautiful when Miles Davis said, don't fear mistakes, they don't exist. But the guy must be a genius to say that. I mean, but the mistake or mistakes, I think are very important. Well, we have to be careful to the mistake. I'm not meaning disasters. I mean, you keep under control. But if you are too how to say, careful, maybe it refrains too much. But this idea of limit in architecture is crucial. I mean, to know how much we can take the risk, or how much you can, when to stop drawing. So it's very important also, to know when it's too much.
Angelo, if I may ask,
and too much authorship too sometimes.
Yeah, of course. Maybe just to
yeah.
conclude,
yes.
one idea that I like to think, because, sorry, I'm enjoying this. But just to conclude, I mean, as an image, the idea of authorship, the beautiful book written by your favorite author, So is the authorship has a proper scale, no? This is beautiful, no? The book, your favorite, all. But if you go to a library, 100 books, then you take one second, and then 100 books, all written by the same person, and you discover then 100,000 books in that library. The entire library, the totality of books were written by the same person. This is a monster. This is not authorship. So it has a scale that is allowed. Very, very important.
Yeah.
Yes. I guess just to follow this thought, that I noticed that you carefully chose 3 projects to present and to not overly simplify. But it seems like those 3 projects, you chose a solution that involved elevating architecture above ground to answer 3 different problems. And I was wondering if in selecting those 3 projects, having that commonality, does it relate to something you think about often in terms of design? Does elevating elements or architecture through these vertical members something, because it seems like you describe it as a result of building code, or but it seems like you're much more sensitive and than just building code. Is that a sort of a recurring imagery that you often think about throughout your career?
The answer to that for Angelo is yes. At the very end, we heard him talk about the different levels. So the telephone wires are at this height, the aeroplanes are at this height, the building envelope is here. When Angelo talks about Paulo, and I've even seen him sketch a section, he's incredibly aware of these different strata or levels or heights. So you've got the highways are in the old riverbeds. He showed us the picture of the viaduct. You have the rich people in the helicopters on top. So I think absolutely yes, it is. And it's not a simple underground, ground, above ground, but the what goes at what height, I think, is something you do author a lot.
Yeah.
And also a very deep section that goes all the way down to minus 250 at the geothermal level. But I think if we still try and find commonalities, maybe a title for today could be urban rooms.
Yeah.
In a way, I mean, you said it very explicitly in the beginning of your presentation, the city and the house, and the city like the house, which I think was consistently present. But it's also through this vertical kind of situation that they're resolved, maybe.
Yeah.
But the urban room is everywhere, and it's I don't know, was it like 750 by 750 meters, or or the 25 by 10? I mean, it's the same.
Yes.
It's extremely consistent, actually.
Yes. The difference of the scales, I think 750 is a project that you can't see. You can encompass the whole project in a glance. No, it is not. It doesn't fit. So I like this very much. So the scale is much more close to urban scale than architectural scale. Or
But Brazil has buildings. That park has other buildings about which you can say the same thing. The canopy or the.
Yes, yes. But that one crossed the obstacles. And what is nice, this is just to talk, know what we are doing. I'm sorry about it. But the nice thing about this scale, I think that it's a scale in which vision is unusable. Everything is mental. Or intellectual. So it's a kind of architecture that you're just as a way to say just be able to enjoy with your eyes closed. So this is very, I think that it's important also because architecture is rely too much in one of the.
But you could also say for this garden house,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't, maybe there's a part that you can see the whole thing, but I don't think you can see the whole thing from any corner of this. There's always something else.
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah,
So,
but
yes.
yes, architecture always required.
And then
Roaming
Peter's
out.
urban rooms
Yeah.
were also urban rooms, but they were, I thought they were very miserable in the beginning, the corners.
Yeah.
But then I think when you said that all the life happens there and that kids play there,
Yeah.
to me
And-
that's
and
so
like it-
interesting.
And people go back and forth on them, like,
On the
why do I have this thing?
well, but yeah,
But then other people are like, no, I could not possibly live in a house that doesn't have
that.
that.
But it's a result of a constraint of an urban. I'm saying it's not
Yeah.
a desire of one culture versus the other. It's a byproduct of packing.
Yeah, exactly.
Aggregation
But it's
of
also
many
packing
rooms.
full of corners and weird windows, and then
Mm.
interesting things happen there
Yeah,
because people run into each other, or you said people can hide there,
yeah.
and that's very interesting
it's-
spaces in buildings. Those spaces that are
It's
somehow.
and it's both
The
the
studio.
constraint of the overall building form,
Mhm.
but then it's the constraint of decisions made in the plan. Where it's like I'm not going to
True.
cut through to the front. Like I
I
could
put
solve
the main,
this.
the most social part of the house right in the, the
Yeah. But also you could fix the problem by just cutting through to the front with that room. But they don't do that because they want to preserve the front rooms. Or you could fix it by sending the Berlin room farther down the L to give it
yeah,
more.
farther down is possible, but sending it to the other side is not possible because it's backing to another one. But I agree
No,
that
exactly.
it's
but
a choice that I make that you're right.
that kind of so they're decisions in the shape of the building and
I
decisions
have
in the
another,
entrance.
I have another thing because that image, not that bothers me a bit, but I have a question about it, and I think I'm trying to find another commonalities between the two talks. And of course, this is just to talk,
Yes.
also after a few glasses of wine. But how about like there is something about repetition and I think even more than repetition, multiplier. The fact that we have a pool above, but there's also one down below. So the things are somehow multiplied and repeated, and it's I think when I'm reading also the square project, there is a repetition of the same day. Every block there is a new truss, and there is something, and then also in the Switzerland project, the corner is kind of multiplied many ways, and I also see that at the level of the Berlin room, kind of how it's being multiplied, not necessarily repeated, multiplied, and I just want to ask that question, and like for example, why do we need this pool on the ground, and why is not all plants?
We don't need. Well, we don't need. But it's funny. This pool has a bench in here.
Yes.
The kitchen is so close.
Okay.
This is the best way to have caipirinhas. You know what is caipirinha?
Okay. Can you not use your charm to answer it?
I mean,
No, he states in ways that are
they work
impossible to
for
translate.
different purposes.
Yes.
But I mean,
I'm
I mean, any this project is maybe it's not about needs. No, I mean, it's funny how things happen. But I mean, what for me, I mean, it's important in the way that makes me feel fine or relaxed. Is that everything was designed with a lot of conversation. I mean, it's always this process. We used to meet maybe each other week for more than 1 year, and so all the time. Wow. But I like to think water by definition, the final level, and in this case is vertical. You know, I mean, I like this kind of situation. You know, when I mentioned about, you know, the cost, is
Yes.
it more expensive? And of course, a little bit, but just a little.
But not so much because you don't have to excavate
Yeah.
the pool, right?
Yes, but you know what? One thing that this is true, but of course, no, it's a little.
Almost.
Numerically doesn't show
it's
itself.
totally true, but also it's also a kind of way to think, but it's totally true. At this neighborhood, almost every house has a swimming pool, but this neighborhood is the former riverbed. So this is why the foundation goes down 40 meters. If you build a swimming pool here on the ground, so you are going to build a concrete box, and it must have foundation, and the foundation must go 40 meters deep. So if you have a concrete box, the wall is at least 1.5 meters deep. So you have this beam, and nobody would make a foundation each 3 meters. No, the big span is not a big span. Is the proper span for that depth of beam. So the fantasy, you know, that I have is that if we start to excavate the whole neighborhood, I would show that this pool is the typical pool, but revealed. It's a little, no, but they are all like this. And this is interesting, you know. It's a little bit more expensive because instead to go just 40 meters deep, I keep going maybe 5 meters up. Instead to make a concrete with very badly done, we were more accurate about the form work. So I think this is really the difference.
I
I also have a question or comment, I guess, about repetition and maybe a little bit about typology, because the observation that I'm making is that like all of these projects that you're showing are different types, programs, but I see some sort of similarity. It's like a type that it wants to recreate itself. For instance, in this one, it's a pool, but it's edited to be a little bit different because it's responding to its conditions. By raising the pool, you get more heat from the sun. And then also in the case of the Swiss building, like the project itself is raised. So it's like, I almost see like there is a desire for your architecture to type of repeat itself. And same as the museum where like the bar is kind of editing itself above the highway. So I guess my question is, do you think like there's desire for you to repeat this type of moves, I guess, like in different scales, or do you look for these types of conditions to like implement this type of architecture that edits itself into the situation?
You haven't shown Santa Teresa.
Good. No, you can answer. No, but I. Well, I don't know. But I think I can't say about repetition in one single project. And this is like to imprint a rhythm or a way to design, and it's never exactly a repetition because you're counterweighting one side to other. No, it's always a way to balance. No, the drawing. I don't know. I like drawing. I have to confess that I'm an AutoCAD person. I mean, I never use 3D. I just use AutoCAD. I like very much because I like very much geometry, and for me, geometry is a divinity. Like it's like godness, and so the rules are so clear, no? And sometimes you just trust in it, you know. I mean, because it's interesting. Architecture is beautiful. No, there is one thing that I need Peter here to help me, but they're read in Hegel. When he described about the birth of consciousness, and the birth of consciousness, the first like how to say, the first manifestation, the most roughly manifestation is what Hegel called sensitive certainty, that we could call intuition. And there are 3 levels. And the second one, I won't remember the name. The third one is the kind, could be the scientific judgment, but I mean, it's a very logical kind of consciousness. But architecture is interesting because it's the connection between that first very rough manifestation of consciousness and